Hi, kids. How's it going?
Good, man. How
Very
are
good.
you?
It's our old buddy Dave Bartoo from the wilderness of northwestern America.
Yep. It's been far too long. It's been far too long. And then, Josh and I had a little bit of a Twitter exchange, and people seemed to like it. And then he asked me to come on and maybe address points of view.
Yeah, it's not even like we had an exchange. You quote tweeted me, and then my mention filled with garbage for the next 24 hours is what happened, Dave.
Well, garbage take, garbage response. Right? But hey, before we go into your take and your questions of me, I think maybe we should preface to all the listeners, because it's been a long time since I've been on. I was on for a lot. I think you idiots even let me host the whole show one time remotely from here in Oregon.
Did.
Right? That was cool.
You did.
But a lot of things have changed for me since then.
Yes.
What I do in college football and now in the NFL is vastly different than a little bit ago.
Now, originally, you're the man behind the Matrix, which was really kind of on this Grum, our first foray into analytics.
It was. You're right.
It really was. I mean, just as analytics was starting to get some more popularity, it had been in baseball, and it started to branch into football. Dave was kind of our gateway into that. But now, Dave, the Matrix has, well, just like the Matrix does, it expands and it bleeds into other universes and it evolves.
It evolves. And what we evolved into staffing in college football. We really didn't see a quality need for analytics on the field in game. Football moves too fast. Everything you see on TV, I don't buy most of it. Okay, it's just not quantifiable, the speed at which college football moves and everything like ESPN says when you're watching the game. So we went off field. And so we started working on analytics in coaching. And now our database is over 16,000 coaches since 2010. We have everybody graded you could think of in college football. And so we started working with programs in college football on that. Then the NFL caught on to it. If you haven't noticed, this year, a lot of stuff moving from college to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also correlating college coaching grades to the draft and how good guys perform based on their college coaching. So as you can imagine, NFL is very interested in that. But in spite of most of our focus on coaching, I still love dabbling in the dark arts of scheduling and being a devil's advocate, right? And so what Josh brought up really was a scheduling thing. So my ears popped up. I'm like, oh, scheduling. Let's talk scheduling. Now, this is I love telling this story because this is my first time a college football program ever reached out to me. It was a Big Ten program too. They reached out to me about scheduling because I'd been tweeting a lot about scheduling, and I'd worked with a lot of SEC teams on concepts. But I was on spring break. I was at my mom and dad's house, right? And it was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're talking somewhere between like Scotts Bluff and Crawford, right? I mean, way out there. And I got up in the morning and I was all out of limes. And how can I have a gin and tonic without limes? So I had to walk across the footbridge, cross the river, over to the store and get limes. As I'm coming back, my phone rang. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I rarely get reception. I answer it. Boom. I'm on a conference call with an AD and a Big Ten staff. And they didn't want to schedule tough. The AD wanted a home and home with LSU. And now this was a program that was trying to rebuild itself. And my simple thing was, do you want to go 8-4 while losing to LSU, or beat somebody like Louisiana Valley School of Dentistry, go 9-3, have some top 25 games in November, and get some momentum? So my position won out. They ended up the year that they would have played LSU. LSU beat the bejesus out of Syracuse. That program went top 25. They went 9-3. They had 2 top 25 games. They finished in the top 25. They haven't finished. I don't think they've finished outside the top 25 since then. So scheduling has always been of real interest to me. So that's kind of, when we get to Josh's question, that's kind of my background on it. It's been over a decade that I worked on it. Now, I also told you about my devil's advocate stuff, right? Did I ever tell you the story about Nick Saban, Brett Bielema, and Rich Rod?
No.
All right. So they all walk into a bar. No, I'm kidding. But I got in the middle of it, right? And this was several years ago, obviously. Brett was at Arkansas. Nick was still at Alabama, and Rich Rod was at Arizona. And this was that pace of play thing, right?
Yes.
And the argument was, oh, well, if you run more plays, you get more injuries, right? Well, A, that's a stupid argument, because if you reverse engineer it, it basically says you shouldn't run plays or play football because you get hurt, right? So that's silly. But I started looking at it, and I said, okay, that's not a level playing field. So I took 10 years of injury data, and I looked at all of it every year for 10 years. And do you know which conference have the highest rate of starts lost to injury? SEC.
Okay.
For 10 consecutive years. Highest rate of starts lost to injury for 10 consecutive years. You know which was the biggest conference by weight for 10 consecutive years?
SEC.
SEC. Oh my gosh. So you're telling me that the big guys hurt each other a lot more than the littler guys, right? Well, okay, who's number 2? Guess who was number 2 in injury per snap for 10 consecutive years?
Big Ten.
Big Ten. And guess who was number 2 in injury in weight for 10 consecutive years?
B1G.
Big Ten. ACC was number 3 right across the board. Pac-12, number 4 right across the board, right? The Big 12, the fast conference full of little guys. Least number of starts lost to injury per play, right? And now that happened for 10 straight years, but something changed. Something changed. And what changed was the Big Ten went to 9 conference games. Guess over the last 5 years, which conference leads college football in starts lost to injury per snap over the last 5 years?
Big Ten.
Big Ten. Whoa, shocking, right? But let's take it a step further. I also looked at the group of 5. Did you know that starts lost per snap at the group of 5 level over those 10 years was 3 times less than the Power 5? 3 times less. The NFL starts lost to injury career or seasons lost to injury was 300% more at the NFL level. It is like, it's a rule of 300. It's a 3X rule. NFL, you're going to get hurt 3 times as much as Power 5, which is 3 times worse than G5. This is why FCS and Division II can get away with a 64, 128 team playoff. They're little guys who don't get hurt, right? So you start adding these games up. Now we're going to go to a playoff. 13, 14, 15. You're going to have some team is going to have to play up to 17 games to win a national title now. 17 games. Dude, that's a lot of football games.
Yes,
right? So you start looking at it that way. And so I think one of the things you have to look at when you're looking at scheduling, which is part of Josh's question and comment, was the physicality index of it. Now you guys, we're kind of new into it. I got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that now recruiting has remained pretty steady for everybody, right? Georgia 1, Alabama 2, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
blah, blah.
hasn't changed dramatically, no.
Right, it hasn't changed dramatically. But do you feel that the depth has been hurt through the new free agency now? You might recruit as well, but your depth just isn't there. Kind of levels the playing field a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, both of you? No? Yes, no?
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We're just so early into the process that I haven't been able to totally wrap my arms around it.
Right. But given the idea of a physicality index, right, and less depth, the tougher the games you play, the more hurt you're going to get, right? I mean, if Nebraska played 12 Big Ten games, they're going to be significantly more hurt and injured going into a Big 10 championship game or a playoff game than if they played 5 Big Ten games and 7 non-conference ones, right? Especially if the 7 non-conference are quote-unquote cupcakes. So one of the things we got to look for is now we're not going 12-0, 13-0. We got to go 16 games. We got to go 17 games. Unless you believe that Nebraska is never going to get to the playoffs. If you only care about the first 12, then who cares about the rest of it, right? But I think you guys all want to see Nebraska in the playoffs and contending again, don't you? That's what you expect.
And that was the point that Matt Rhule was making to Tom Chattel. This wasn't about we're trying to build a program. We just want to rack up, easy wins. This was more about positioning for Nebraska, what they hope to be a future playoff appearance.
Right. So, and that's, and so then you start looking at games, because I saw Josh was like, oh, what about some exciting non-conference games, right? Now, the difficulty in the non-conference games in September is that teams get crappy after 4 years, right? You may schedule Baylor top 25 today, but they're 3-9 the next year, right? You could schedule national champion Texas and they go 5-7 the next year, right? You can schedule Washington and Chris Peterson. 5 years later, Jimmy Lake has them out of a bowl, right? So trying to schedule good games in advance is nearly impossible, number one. Number two, strength of schedule, now that there's 9 conference games for just about everybody, strength of schedule doesn't mean anything, right? It's for seeding purposes later on, but you cannot control it at all. So that makes it difficult. And, really when it comes down to it, you don't remember the schedule, right? You don't remember the schedule. I mean, Josh, how old are you now?
I am 35.
35. So you don't even remember Nebraska 94, 95, 97 titles, do you?
I remember the 97 one, but that's it.
90. Oh, okay.
That
But
sucks.
John, I know you remember.
I remember.
He's 100 years old. Of course
I am
he
not
does.
100 years old.
How about 94 where they beat Miami just to a pulp,
Yes.
right?
Yes. It was the
Right?
famous, the Miami's down on a knee, gassed.
Oh, my
Warren
God,
Sapp,
right?
Hall of Famer, down on a knee,
Yeah.
gassed.
Do you remember who they beat that year?
Who Nebraska beat?
Yeah, do you remember they beat Miami, right?
Yeah.
And they beat Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
And those are the only 2 top 25 recruiters they played that entire year, right? They only had 7 conference games. They played Pacific. They played an FBS or a G5 West Virginia, right? They had 5 non-conference games, and they were all Division II FCS or G5. But you don't remember because you don't care. You were 13-0 when you won a national title, right? And if you look at 97, 95, 94, Nebraska won 3 national titles in those years. And in those years, they played a grand total of 7 top 25 teams. For Nebraska to win a national title today or anybody, you're going to have to play 7 top 25 recruiters in 1 year. So I know it's really cool to go, God, I want a better schedule. But to get a better schedule, you have to change the way you look at it. You have to look at the whole ball of wax. This isn't 97, 95, 94. This is a battle of attrition. You have injury rates. You have physicality indexes unlike anything that we've ever seen. And I know it would be fun to have exciting games for 4 months, September through December. But you can't tell me for a minute the greatest game of your life is going to be a playoff game in Lincoln. Can you imagine the playoff game in Lincoln in December? Dude, I will personally crawl naked through broken glass.
Don't do that. Don't make that promise.
Yeah.
Just come to the game. You don't have to crawl anywhere naked.
Yeah,
But you know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
Oklahoma, they're going to be like, are they drilling for oil in Nebraska? Because, I mean, the Richter scale is going to move. And do you know how you get to that playoff game? You win football games. It doesn't matter who you beat.
So, Dave, real quick.
It doesn't matter who you beat.
So, I think that, I don't know if you realize, like, John and I agree with you wholeheartedly. We just don't care. I am not viewing this, and John is not viewing this through the lens of what will present Nebraska with the easiest opportunity. I want to be entertained, and I want to watch conferences play good out of conference games.
We're the guys sitting in the Coliseum. We want to see the Lions go up against the Gladiators.
My issue is that I want everybody else to do what I want them to do. It's not that I don't think this is smart, because it obviously is. I just hate that this is what we have to do as a sport.
But you want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Right? And the most entertaining game you are going to get at Memorial Stadium is going to be a playoff.
Yeah, I mean, if they ever get good again, sure.
And the only way they get there, right? The only way they get there is 10, 11, or 12 wins. That's the only way, right? I mean, your average top 11 team for the last 10 years is 11.2 and 1.43. That's your average top 11 team. Okay? And there's only been 6 teams finish in the top 11 of the playoff committee the last 10 years that are 9-3. 3 of those are the SEC. All right. So if you want that entertainment, that ultimate rush, that ultimate high, you want that home game in Memorial Stadium in December. That's what you want. That's what I want. That's what everybody listening.
Dave, why can't we want every conference to have to play one Power 5 team or Power 4, whatever we're going to use? Why can't we want that to happen every September for every league?
Okay, and again, you're guessing. What if it's a crappy game?
No, but I'm just saying, at least it's on the schedule.
How is that? You're playing a team that was 2-10. You're playing Vanderbilt. Wow, that's so exciting, dude. Look at your stadium. You fill it up every September playing Bahama School of Dentistry. It doesn't matter, right? And I understand from what your standpoint is like. I want to be entertained all the time, but you can't have the rush, or you could. I mean, you could still schedule wicked tough, but look at your national titles you already have at Nebraska. None of those schedules were that hard. They weren't, right? You want to believe they were, but they beat 2 top 10 recruiters and won a national title, and that's cool. But we're talking about odds to get to the playoff. The tougher the schedule, the harder it is to get there. The more you're going to get beat up, the harder it is to get there. The more you get beat up, the harder it is to win when you get there because you've suffered too much attrition. This is a situation you cannot have your cake and eat it too and have the expectations. If you want to have a monster 12-game schedule in the regular season, then you need to say, I don't care we go to the playoffs or not. That's what you're saying, right? You can't have it.
And that is, for the record, that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not talking just about this from a Nebraska point of view. Like, I want Alabama to have to play a power team. I want LSU to have to play a power team. I want Oregon to.
Alabama, Texas was an intriguing game last year.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean,
because we like watching games, Dave, between good teams.
I'd rather watch Texas play Alabama than Alabama play.
Dave, you are viewing this obviously through the lens of coaches and programs. Like, I am not, though.
I know. And if you want set schedules, call the NFL.
Well, I mean, honestly,
homogenize, go to the NFL, watch NFL games.
And that's what college football is going to get to, which is the irony of this is that John and I don't want the sport to move in that direction, and I'm guessing it's going to move in that direction.
It may.
I think it will.
You know something, but careful what you wish for.
No, I'm not, and I'm not wishing for that.
No. We're not wishing for the Super League, but yeah, I mean, it's probably going to get there. My question for you is this, Dave. Is the pull of not having all Power 5 schools on your schedule going to be enough to kind of keep this version of college football that we've gotten used to together? Because we're still going to have the power schools that are going to want their cake and eat it too. In other words, they're going to want all the control of the playoff and everything that goes with it, but they still want to just feed the group of 5 teams enough of a crumb to keep them relevant so that they can still put them on their schedule. Thus, they're not playing an all SEC or an all Big Ten schedule, which is what a lot of people are assuming is going to happen if we get a Super League.
Right. And if you do that, see, now let's say you go Super League. Guess what? Somebody's got to lose, man. Somebody's got to come in last place.
I agree.
You know, how long, you know, you look at the last 10 years of playoff teams. Okay. Last 10 years of playoff teams, minus 2020. So really last 9 years. 2020 doesn't count for anything when it comes to college football in my mind. Okay. You look at the final top 11, 87% of those teams came from the top 5 recruiters in every conference.
Yep.
87% came from the top 5 recruiters. Now, if the Big Ten and the SEC say, hey, we're just going to take our football and go away, guess what? All those teams at the bottom end of the recruiting, they are never going to see 500. Right? How many Arkansas, Mississippi State, you know, South Carolina, Michigan State, Washington, UCLA don't care. Right? How many of these, you know, Minnesota fans, how many of them are going to go, yeah, I'm cool with 4 and 8 for the rest of my life because we're making a lot of money and it's a cool league? It's not cool. Right? And then what's next? Oh, we're going to start drafting guys. Good Lord. Right? You know, and so who knows where it's going to go? Just follow the money. Right? That's usually the obvious one. But right now, for what we got, we have this 12-team playoff for the next decade. And I believe it's no different today than it was before. Actually, I think it's more important to schedule lighter than ever because, like I said, that physicality index and the Big Ten is wicked tough. Nebraska is going to, they have 5 top 15 recruiters in their conference right now. They are going to face at least 3 of them every single year. And if they get to a conference championship game, that's 4. That is more top 25 recruiters in 1 year without even getting to the playoffs than any Nebraska national championship team ever had to face any individual year. So I get where you're coming from wanting to have that in September, but scheduling it and actually having that team good that year, you're just throwing darts, man. There's just no way you can predict that. So I agree with every coach, specifically what Matt's saying about this from the standpoint of goals of the program. Where do you want to go? And, well, it's a choice if you want to make September hard, because now we have two paths, right? If you win out, go 12-0, lose your conference championship game, you can still get in. If you play a tough September and go 0-4, you can run the table and still get in by winning the conference title. You have two paths now. You have choices in scheduling. I just don't agree that it's the right path for a program to pursue an extremely hard schedule, because with the playoff committee, there's zero reward for that. The only thing that counts is winning football games.
Unless you're Florida State.